Hey, everybody.
How's Boundary of Waters, Hugo?
Oh, it was phenomenal.
Can only imagine. Happy birthday, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, you've got to get up there at least once, man. It is
Yeah.
really, really nice.
Dang.
Hopefully the
Gotta plan
bugs
for it.
hadn't hatched.
There was a mayfly hatch, but there also wasn't a moment I didn't have my bug repellent on and a
Yeah.
bug net over my head. I imagine 15 minutes without any bug protection and you'd be in pretty bad shape.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be pretty brutal, but this time of year, sometimes especially with how bad winter was up there, I thought maybe you might have been able to avoid it.
Yeah, we get right when they release the permits. When is it, January or February? My buddy who works at the DNR, he gets them for Memorial Day weekend like every year because we're just beating the bugs. Like like we went in the 24th or the 25th or something, and literally just coming out on the 30th, there's a difference in the bug population. I mean, it's like right now, and it was 80 degrees all week, so that was the first time it was 80s.
Drew, you're in Minneapolis, right?
I'm down in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Oh, class.
Yeah.
It's my old stomping grounds when I was a kid. That area.
Nice. Yeah, I grew up down here. I was in Eau Claire for a number of years and moved down here a couple years ago. Yeah.
I'm still in Eau Claire, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there for about 14 years and just moved down a couple years ago.
Cool. You like lacrosse?
Yeah, I love it. Grew up here, just was ready to kind of realize most of my friends were down here. Instead of driving an hour and a half, just decided to make the move.
Makes sense. Totally makes sense. It's got to be nice working for Jamf. You can work anywhere in the world.
Yeah, there's some conveniences to it for sure.
Yeah.
Caleb, thanks for holding down the fort for me. It looks like so this month we experimented with a new with Zoom. You either have to force everyone to have a Zoom authorized email to get into these meetings, and we've had a number of people that either didn't have that or didn't want to do that. So we experimented with the waiting room this month. So looking for any and all feedback that anybody has on their login experience this month. Hopefully it was just as easy and seamless. But if it was not, I definitely would love to know about that. I will take that as a resounding, it was probably fine.
It didn't feel any different than previous meetups.
Cool. I will accept seamless.
It was seamless for me.
Thanks, Graham. So far, David Marsh is winning the best stock picture contest. There's usually a couple pretty cool ones. David, by far the winner so far.
Thank you. For free trial, you can also do the same thing.
So that's very kind of you.
There's an app for it.
I think one of We usually, one of our attendees, I think, has them. They're like photoshopped on the USS Enterprise from Star Trek, I believe. That one's usually pretty cool.
We're still waiting for Chad, aren't we?
I think so.
I don't see him. I'm kind of holding off on diving into LaunchPad times until he's here, so we know he's ready.
Is Chad doing the Launchpad times this month?
No, I am, but it's a relatively short one. I just want to make sure that.
Mm.
I mean, we could hang out after the Launchpad times until Chad gets here too, I guess, right?
Yeah, and we have our standard small talk for 5 minutes and let everybody join.
Yeah,
He might be trying to.
Oh, go ahead.
Chad's just creating a little drama.
Well, yeah, Chad's not doing the keynote either, so he doesn't need to join.
Oh. Well, shows you how much I know.
All right.
See, we have Ryan Kennedy here. Is that you, Ryan?
I can unmute myself. Yeah, that's me, bud. How are you?
Oh, Ryan's Ryan and I used to work together.
Oh, cool.
Nice to see you here, Ryan. Is Kevin gonna join, Ryan?
Nah, I don't think so. You just put the cross hands in the air anytime anyone mentions Mac and goes, not my problem anymore.
All right. Well, I think we might as well go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining our monthly Mac Admin Meetup. We try and do this the first Friday of every month. And we've got a wide range of topics that we usually go into. This month, we'll be doing on-prem to cloud migrations with Jamf. And we have Hugo is going to be doing the Launchpad times, where we cover the latest in Apple news and rumors. So we'll start there. But for these meetups, I think this might be painfully obvious, but we try and keep these pretty casual. We always want to have a little bit of room for just free discussion, picking the brains of anybody else on this call. We have a lot of smart people on this call. And so if you've got a problem, there's probably someone on this call that's figured it out before. So for that reason, we usually just like to jump right into it. As always, we are open to having any sort of guest speakers. So if you've ever built something cool or something that you want to talk about and you want to get some presentation chops, you are more than welcome to guest speak at one of these events going forward. We've had a couple of guest speakers that want to present at JNUC, for instance, and this is a nice way to kind of dip your toes in the water. Other than that, I think we can probably go ahead and get started. Chris, I don't know if you have anything that you want to mention before we cut Hugo free. He's a tough guy to rein in once we give him the thumbs up.
Yeah, no, let Hugo can take it from here.
We will let him cook.
Already started
Hugo,
taking
the
it.
floor is yours.
Thanks, guys. So yeah, I'm going to present the LaunchPad times where our news is down to earth. This month is going to be relatively short due to a lack of major updates. So we have Apple updates. iOS and iPadOS 16.5 dropped on the 18th, along with macOS Ventura, and I believe 12.6.6 Monterey and like 11.7 something, 7.7 for Big Sur, but we don't worry too much about that. Not a lot in these release notes. The biggest thing was sports feed that stood out to me. The Apple Watch auto unlock was fixed, which I believe broke in 13.3 or 13.3.1. And then if you're a part of either the developer beta, the Appleseed beta, or the public beta, and your Apple ID is signed in on your computer and associated with your Mac, you'll now see an extra option in system settings. In software update, you'll see the public release for updates And then you also have a new beta option, which is pretty nice. So that's something to look out for moving forward. And I believe they even changed the mechanism now. So it'll update in the background similar to iOS, where everything will actually download for you, and then you'll just click update and it'll be a lot more seamless moving forward. So that was kind of a big update. And again, for iOS, just sports feed and Apple News, you can watch your favorite teams and get the scores. A ton of CVEs and patching with the macOS updates 13.4 as well. Of course, we have WWDC coming up in a week, 5th through the 9th, and the major talking points for that, I think, are going to be macOS 14, iPad, and iOS 17. I think we're going to get a 15-inch MacBook Air presented. And then, as has been rumored for the past, 3 years, Apple AR glasses, potential leak, potential preview. And that's about it for Apple updates. Anybody else have any Apple updates that I might have missed?
I will mention that WWDC is next week. So something to keep an eye out for.
Didn't they say that the TV OS is getting a major upgrade, or was it the Watch OS that was getting a major upgrade?
I believe it's watchOS 10 and tvOS 15. I think we're.
I think the rumors are saying the watchOS is getting a larger upgrade.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Anybody have any insight on what the update contains?
I read design changes.
Yeah, ease of use, new, I think they said updated or redone user interface. I think those are the big two. I'm anxious for that one, I think, more than the iPad and the iOS. The watch is it needs a little bit of facelift.
Yeah, it hasn't changed for what, 5 years now, realistically. Still the same swiper doodle.
I'm really curious about the Reality OS, if it's true.
They're augmented. They previewed that last year at WWDC, if I'm not mistaken. They released the dev kit for that. So I imagine this year they will preview that kit for Mac.
Oh, nice.
These are all they've been talking about AR glasses for years now, so we can only hope. Well, that's it for Apple updates. Next, we're going to talk about Jamf updates. Right now, we still got 1046.1 that I believe dropped a month ago. We've already detailed all the updates for 1046 in our last month, so no major changes to Jamf yet. But today, June 2nd, app installers via app service has been confirmed to be implemented in Jamf Pro 1047. So this image right here, that's just the feature request page on Jamf's website. So it was officially confirmed this morning that we will be getting app installers via self-service, which is huge. Everybody that I've talked to has been waiting for this. We've created workarounds with extension attributes to kind of create the facade of using the app installers and self-service by just putting a person in a group when they click the button in self-service. So this has been a long time coming. Very excited to see this come into fruition. Other than that, any additional Jamf updates anybody wants to mention?
I was on one of the Jamf Nation learning sessions the other day, and there is a significant rumor that the user interface for Jamf Pro is going to be upgraded. I
Like
can't say
beyond,
much. They said we weren't even allowed to talk about it, but I figure this is a group that we could share it.
uh-oh, Dan, sounds like you're dropping.
Uh,
Kidding. I'm just kidding.
uh,
So is this more of an update than like the inventory display update that occurred a few versions back?
Yeah,
I mean,
this
that
is,
threw me for a loop.
They showed a couple of screenshots and it looks magnificent.
I like
Oh, that's
that.
pretty cool.
Did you happen to screenshot their screenshot?
You know, I was about a half a second away from doing it, and then he said, "Please don't take any screenshots." And I was like, oh, "Come on, I gotta."
It's the right answer. We wouldn't share them here anyways. That's the first I'm hearing of this, so that's pretty cool to throw that
Yeah,
on the rumor
and-
mill.
And the way it looks like it's got some significant upgrades to a lot of the features that have been in the feature request. I'll say that I saw a couple of new groups on the left-hand sidebar, and it was very appealing to the eye.
That is a juicy rumor, Dan. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Wow.
Real juice. Kind of scared
Only at
because
J-Nuck, when you see me on stage, you can come and shake my hand and say thanks.
you
Oh, that's
prepared
exciting.
everybody for the future.
Presenting this year.
Yeah, I am.
Do you have a link to your presentation for JNOC? You can share with everybody.
No, if they've sent it out yet, let me see if I can dig it up. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, or even the title.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah, that I got.
we'll have plenty of time to get to that too. In last years, we've usually done some sort of JNUC preview type meetup. Also, this is very early, but now that people are starting to plan for JNUC, we'll do a live LaunchPad meetup out in Austin this year. We did one out in San Diego where we got to meet everybody at a bar, and that was a really good time. So anticipate that for this year, but that is months in the future. So we'll get that announcement out here soon at some point.
Well, that's it for juicy additional Jamf updates and feature requests. So anybody have any feature requests they'd like to spotlight and get a few upvotes on from our crowd today? Well, here we go. Export policy profile logs to CSV.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. Even if we could do it with the API, just like anything to get those logs into a list somewhere that's not in the GUI. I'll upvote that. Yeah, I've asked Chad to like try to find any way to like get those logs. And there's no, unless you have access to the database, you can't actually get the logs from a policy. And why that's important is like sometimes, you're working on something, you deploy a policy in mass and it fails on like 200 computers. And you want to be able to do something to those 200 computers. And it's not super easy. You can't like put those into a different group or anything like that. You just have to like go through them one by one.
I think we'll make the 10-year mark here. Created on May 6, 2014.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this is.
I wonder if some of these items, when we had Bill Smith on here a couple sessions ago, he did kind of hint at a lot of the feature requests. He kind of gave the standardized, we hear you and we see you, and I can't say anything right now, but we see you. And I'm curious if that has to do with some of the juicy rumors that Dan was leaking on this call. Bill was tongue in cheek about it, but I'm curious to see what ends up coming of that.
Well, if that's
We're doing a lot of work on a lot of things.
I'll stop sharing.
Right. All right. Thank you, Hugo.
Yeah, I think someone was
any other
asking a question. Did Did you hear that, Eric?
I just said we're doing a lot of work on a lot of different things, that a lot of people have, or a lot of different things that have been pain points for a lot of people, or personal gripes that people have had. So,
Well, I think that's probably a great transition to our keynote and feature speaker for this month is Drew Duggan from Jamf. Drew, if you want to go ahead and take the reins and introduce yourself, I think that would be great. Let me know if you should be a host already, and should be able to share your screen. Just let me know if we don't have that.
Yeah, he doesn't need to share his screen.
Okay.
yeah, I don't have a deck or anything. Just kind of more of a Q&A thing. I was asked to kind of come in and just talk generically about what it looks like to move from self-hosted or on-prem to Jamf Cloud. A quick thing about me. I see Scott on here. There's a few other names on here that names and faces that I definitely recognize from my duration here at Jamf. Quick bio on me. I'm Drew Duggan. I'm senior sales engineer at Jamf. I've been with Jamf since 2011. Came up through the support ranks. Been on the dark side of sales for I don't know, 8 or 9 years now. Number of different capacities in support. Dabbled a little bit in pro services, but mainly just the sales side, the people you don't want to talk to for a long time. But definitely a number of recognizable names on here. Just as I've supported a number of different accounts over the years. So a lot of different experiences in different areas of the company. So very familiar with the Jamf offering Apple ecosystem. So thanks for inviting me to be a part of the conversation here. So kind of a quick, just out of curiosity for my sake, since I'm kind of new to the group, how many people here, if you can kind of a show of hands, how many people are still self-hosting, doing on-prem hosting of your Jamf instance? Give a few seconds to find those. So we got a few people. Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon. You know, I'm the most common reason that we have a lot of customers that are still, or that are self-hosted. Easily the most common reason we have is just you've been a Jamf customer for a long time. You know, we didn't have a Jamf Cloud offering even until probably, if I had to throw out a year, it's probably 2014, somewhere around there, before we even kind of offered something in Jamf Cloud. You know, it wasn't something that most vendors even really offered. So it wasn't something that was out there. But now of our, I don't know, 75,000 plus customers, we've got about 66,000 or so of those customers are all Jamf Cloud. Of new customers that come on board, we're in the 98% of those are all going Jamf Cloud. Just for a multitude of reasons. The easiest being that it's not, you don't have to maintain anything. There's no, if you're a new customer, there's no price difference between hosting yourself or being on Jamf Cloud. So that's the easiest reasoning for being on-prem. If you're a new customer, pretty much the only reason why you would go self-hosting is just for security reasons. Not that there's any security concerns with Jamf Cloud. It's just that there's a kind of a lot of those customers, there's going to be a requirement, more or less, think kind of government, or there are some database access things. But the main one that we see with most of our customers that are going on-prem will be like government contractors, that sort of thing, that there's kind of a requirement to be on-prem. So when it kind of goes into the security conversation, that's one of the primary justifications. Yeah. And obviously there's some other ones I see in the comments there. Some other reasonings for doing that too. And in the grand scheme of things, when you do kind of a pro and con list, ultimately a lot of customers kind of, the pros outweigh the cons for that, especially when you get back into the pricing conversation. That's kind of why we've seen most people, or the large majority of customers going with a Jamf Cloud offering. But so over the years, is in the since we've had a cloud customers, or a Jamf Cloud offering, I've worked with a lot of customers over the years that have kind of gone through that process. You know, there's a number of people on the call here that are self-hosting, kind of here to answer some of those questions and be a resource for y'all.
Yeah, thanks, Drew, for the very in-depth introduction. Yeah, so we wanted to bring Drew in the call just because we had some questions on how this process worked and like what's happening in the back end and stuff like that. So we're going to do a little bit of an interview style type thing, and then after that we'll do a Q&A with the rest of the group. But kind of going into this, Drew, do you mind potentially, Drew, turning on your camera? Are you in a place?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Cool.
I'm just sitting at home.
Spotlight us. Let me see if this will work. Wait, how does it work when we is this working for people where it's
We see
okay,
both of you right now.
we're both spotlit. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. Perfect. We've still been experimenting with the interview style. Usually we do like a whole keynote presentation, but we've like trying to do this more podcast style.
If they're not both spotlit, in the top right corner, you can click on view and change it from gallery to speaker. Also, if you've got everybody on your screen right now.
I wonder if we can force people to do that, but I don't know.
We'll figure that out later.
Yeah. It's
tomorrow
fun to
problem.
try to set up these like really big Zoom meetings as if they're like more of a conference type thing. So I think you did a great job already explaining what is on-prem versus cloud hosted, Drew. And why someone might want to, actually, maybe I'll ask the first question. Why might a company want to migrate from on-prem to a Jamf Cloud hosted server?
Yeah, I think there's really two main reasons. One, the easy one is they don't want to have to be in charge of managing infrastructure. All of you on the call probably have had to deal with that over the years of dealing with change protocols internally, of having to put in your tickets, whether you're actually managing the infrastructure or it's an entirely different team at the organization. If you're having to, it's a management solution, so you're having to deal with coming in on weekends or staying late, something like that. Even if Jamf may not be deemed like a primary solution or something like that, where you can do stuff during the day, whatever it might be, regardless, not having to be in charge of those of managing a tool set, the back end piece of it. So that's easily one key cog of it. And especially like if there's something that goes wrong on that piece, that's what you're paying for, is somebody else to do that. If there's something goes awry with that, that's ultimately what you're paying the Jamf Online Services team to do. And you think of it's not just you doing that, it's also all the back-end reporting things that you've built out and are maybe paying subscription services for those reporting tools and all of that other stuff that you're building out that you're also having to maintain. And there's just ultimately technical debt that goes into maintaining different services like Jamf yourself, and think of the other tools that are there. So that's one of the main reasons. The other one is we've become over the years, we've been introducing more and more features that are dependent, or that a requirement of it is that you are a cloud customer. And one of those that has been a really big one for customers of late is Microsoft conditional access, or now device compliance. That's a really, really big one for customers. So I would guess that a number of you on this call have at least explored, if not are already using conditional access. But and this is a change that isn't coming from us. This is one that Microsoft, I'm sure you've seen in forums or have seen in Jamf release notes or have heard from Microsoft. Basically, the API that we were using when we introduced macOS conditional access several years ago, Microsoft is shuttering. So in order to do that, the modern API that we have to use is for this device compliance, and a requirement for that is our cloud services connector. So that is only accessible to our Jamf Cloud customers. So there's other services that are enabled with that. There's the Intune integration, but then also a related one is if you're a Google shop, our Google Beyond Corp integration is available for that. There's, if you are wanting to use the Jamf Cloud distribution service, if you want to do that, you can today, if you're hosting yourself, we support Jamf, or we support cloud distribution points, but you would have to provide your own. So if you wanted to have provide your own AWS or something similar, Akamai, Rackspace, something like that, you could. That would just be an added cost that you would have to incur. But it's included in your cost if you wanted to leverage the Jamf Cloud distribution service, which the backend is just AWS. There's also, as an alternative, if you wanted to be able to assign, scope your policies and profiles and what have you to Azure AD or Google Groups, you could do that. But another requirement of that would be that cloud services connector. So there's more and more functionality that we're bringing in. In addition, one last big one is the Jamf app installers. So that's the kind of other big one. There's some smaller ones that I don't need to mention, but those are kind of the big flashing neon light features that you only get if you're a Jamf Cloud customer, just because of the requirement that you have to have that cloud services connector. So those are the two main reasons why we're seeing organizations moving to that. And the feature set piece, again, that Microsoft change, when they came out and they said that they're going to shutter it, that's one that's moving a lot of organizations, just because when you get into that compliant conversation, that's one that we have to have. They're having to implement device compliance, and that's something that is kind of a non-starter for a lot of the organizations that are kind of finally making the moves over to cloud.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's a lot of good reasons to move over. I think one of the biggest things too is like Jamf just keeps introducing new features that can only happen to new cloud customer or to cloud hosted customers. So we don't even know what's going to be happening in the future, but I think a lot of those will probably get added.
Yeah, and we said that several JNUCs ago. I don't even know what year it was. We said it in the keynote where we were kind of pivoting to be a cloud first development organization. And the first phase of that was we had to make sure that customers that were going to be in the cloud wouldn't lose functionality. So that was you could deploy applications through the cloud. We built out the Jamf Infrastructure Manager. So if you wanted to tie in with LDAP, you still could. We introduced the ADCS connector, so you could still deploy certificates if you needed to, those sorts of things. So you weren't losing functionality if you moved to the cloud comparatively. And then now we're in the next stage of that, where we're introducing new functionality that just, and some of this stuff is just kind of a requirement, like connecting into Microsoft and Google and these different vendors. for security reasons, those vendors weren't going to had to have a incoming connection that met basic security standards. And if each individual organization was doing their own work, that was something that they couldn't guarantee that those inbound connections were there, which is basically what the old API was. When everything is coming from the Jamf Cloud infrastructure via the cloud services connector, Microsoft and Google and any other vendors that might be coming, those connections would be coming in through the cloud services connector. They can have the peace of mind that we've been vetted for that. So that's just kind of why, or the why behind that. It's not that we want to be forcing people to do that. It's just kind of the nature of the relationships that we have as a vendor, as a verified vendor with these other partners that we have.
Yeah, cool. So let's say someone wants to move to Jamf Cloud, and I know like server migrations is probably a scary thing to most people. Like what goes into that? Are we going to have to wipe or re-enroll your iPhones, iPads, and Mac computers?
No, you shouldn't have to. A lot of people think they need to, but you really just have to get the MDM profile removed. Especially, well, actually, sorry. Assuming you don't have to change your management URL, your end user shouldn't have to do anything. If that's there, basically the process is we can get a copy of your database, upload that securely, obviously. We get a copy of that, we upload that into the Jamf Cloud. Then we work with your networking team to just flip the switch on your DNS entry, assuming obviously that you have a fully qualified domain for your Jamf URL, which I'm assuming all of you do. And then you point that DNS entry to the Jamf Cloud infrastructure. We provide all this to you, but then you just flip that over and your end users are none the wiser. And then that's pretty much it. So you shouldn't have to re-enroll anything unless, you want to have a different, unless you want to have a different URL. I've worked with a handful of kind of one-off customers that like they're going through rebranding or acquisitions where they need to kind of contractually are required to, pivot off of old branding or something like that. But in the end, even if that is the case, a lot of them, it's an MDM profile with a URL. Does it really matter? Can we, through attrition and slowly as we're, replacing machines just as through a regular refresh process, can we just kind of do that the old way? There's some conversations that can be had to plan out differently. But usually it's pretty seamless. I see a couple other comments in there to that it was pretty seamless, but by and large, you shouldn't ever have to wipe devices or anything like that, unless for one-off purposes, there's a compelling need to.
Mm-hmm. That's good to know. And what does a typical engagement look like? So how much does it cost? How long will it take to schedule? And how long will the server be down for so that users won't be able to log in or be able to connect to Jamf Pro?
Sure. There is a required 2,000 USD, $2,000 engagement fee with Jamf Professional Services for that, and it's a 4-hour half-day engagement for customers. And there's some prerequisites that we would work with you with to kind of schedule those out. Basically, the main one is just getting a copy of the database. One of the main prerequisites is making sure that your Jamf instance is fully updated. You can't be way behind. You've got to be on the current version. You can maybe be like one version behind, but by and large, you've got to be on the most recent version. That's the main thing, getting a copy of that. But otherwise, we'd also have to kind of coordinate with your networking team for that DNS switchover. But otherwise, it's just a 4-hour engagement. And then your database isn't probably going to be all that large. There is a kind of max threshold for how large your database would be, which most I've worked with like one or two customers that we've had to kind of they've had to clean up the database, but that was just because they'd never really cleaned it up. So if you have log flushing turned on, it shouldn't be a problem. So, if you have a normal sized database, the kind of maintenance window that we'd be dealing with for when we switch over shouldn't be very big. We'd be able to give you more specifics on that based off of if you're ready to switch over. Working with our pro services team, just me not being on the front lines, I don't have the specific time on that, but it shouldn't be more than I'd ask Jay how long his was, but I don't think that maintenance window should be more than probably 20 or 30 minutes if we've got all of our ducks in a row for that. But maybe Jay, in the comments, do you have any idea or do you recall how long your maintenance window was when you did the switch over, where like you couldn't log into the Jamf Pro console?
I think we did it overnight.
Okay.
It was painless. The end users never really noticed it, and this is a school, so it doesn't get a lot of use anyway. But we were having some pretty bad problems with the on-prem, and so the solution that tech support came up with was, well, let's put you on a web instance, and so we moved over to hosted, kind of against our will, and but the process itself was really painless and didn't require any downtime that I recall.
Yeah, the main kind of maintenance flip is when you would switch over the DNS entry. So you can kind of manage that to your own extent. The one kind of caveat to plan for is that you would have some kind of data loss, just because of when we got the copy of your database, and then when we kind of flip that over, just because anything that happened in between when that database backup was taken, and then when we started updating that again. So think inventory updates, if any policies happen to execute, that sort of thing. That would be the only thing. So we would want to plan for that. Like, you wouldn't want to be deploying new machines in that period. So if you did it overnight, it probably wouldn't really matter. Things like that you'd want to just kind of think about. Hey, let's not create new policies. Let's not make any changes to our configuration profiles. Let's not actively deploy any machines. Those sorts of things that you'd want to plan for, and it's going to be environment by environment. But it shouldn't be anything that's going to be a major issue.
Yeah. So let's say theoretically someone didn't want to shell out the $2,000 or maybe wait for the engagement to be scheduled. Is this a migration that someone could do on their own without the help of Jamf?
No, because we do have to use our online services team to do that. So it is a required engagement for that. And I forgot to answer the other part of the previous question as far as kind of timing wise. It happens, like I said, it's a 4-hour engagement, and it takes about 2 to 3 weeks for scheduling typically. It kind of depends on time of year, because like the summer is usually a pretty busy time for pro services teams, probably not Jamf specific, but just across any organization. Just the EDU down season, that's usually a pretty big time. So kind of depends on when in the calendar you're doing it. But on average, it's about 2 to 3 weeks is from time of purchase to time of actually when the engagement happens.
Gotcha. Cool. And obviously we've discussed the benefits of moving to the cloud, but what are some of the reasons companies may want to consider staying on-prem?
There have been a handful of customers that have had pretty heavy access to the database, that have they have just a ton of direct queries to the database that the API can't replace. We've been working to kind of create some of that. One of those was like they had some support workflows that they required access to file vault keys. And for security reasons, we hadn't provided access to that via the API. So they needed that for their service system for that, and that was a showstopper for them. So that had been keeping them from that. So some of those were there for that. That's kind of one of the bigger showstoppers, but then that kind of gets into other conversations around like that's obviously a con list, and can we replace that, or is that something that when they have those internal conversations, do the pros outweigh the cons? That's one of those. Honestly, it usually gets into more like contractual stuff or different kind of security requirements. That's why they ultimately don't do it. But when even the security piece anymore, the inability to do the conditional access workflow has completely flipped that conversation, because not being able to do conditional access at some point in the future has been a total game changer for them.
Yeah. And some other things that users mentioned in the chat. Andre said that there were governmental restrictions in Europe. I know we have, like, a lot of times people have problems with like moving data across borders. But you have specific, AWS. I mean, it's AWS that Jamf Cloud is built on. You have like AWS databases in Europe, right? That European customers.
Yeah, definitely. When we set up the instances, we ask you what hosting region you want. So we do have GDPR compliant hosting regions. We have them in Japan, in Australia, in Germany, in the UK, in East and West AWS data centers. So we are GDPR compliant in that sense also. So when we do work with a lot of the organizations we work with are multinational. So ultimately, those organizations just have to decide where they want their data. And those organizations typically end up choosing to have theirs hosted, their databases hosted in the EU.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing that Jay mentioned as well is speed, and just the speed of the server being one of the things.
Specifically, the API is really, really slow.
Okay.
Yeah, a bit slower. Now, Jay, do you have like the base level Jamf Cloud, or are you, what are Drew, I don't even know the names, like what are the different, because I know you can upgrade Jamf Cloud, you can have like a self-hosted instance and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, we do have standard, and we have premium cloud. We do have a gov cloud too, if you needed to be like hosted on FedRAMP and just really in there too. But I personally haven't really worked with it. There's no functional difference between our gov cloud customers and our premium cloud. It's literally just, it's hosted on AWS's gov cloud infrastructure. The main difference is it shouldn't be different allocated resources. The premium cloud is if you needed to, there's 7 or 8 different features, but the big ticket items that are why customers would need to go with our Jamf Premium Cloud option is if you need to do versioning control. Standard cloud customers are just, we communicate what that upgrade cycle is. Typically, it's you get the notification that there's a new version of Jamf Pro out, like version 1047 is coming out, I think next week. We just had our internal training on it yesterday, so I think it's coming out next Tuesday, I believe. So you get the notification, and typically it's about a week and a half later that we'll do that. That will just in mass upgrade all of our standard cloud customers. If you needed to do version and control, which a lot of on-prem customers, we need to be able to. We don't want to upgrade right away. We want to do our internal testing, which is totally understandable, especially if you're used to it. If that is something that you need to do, then Premium Cloud would be your best option. Or from a security standpoint, if you needed to do something like do IP whitelisting for access into the Jamf Pro console or the API, that would be something you needed to do, or that would be a Premium Cloud thing, or do custom SSL or custom ports. There's a couple other ones that would be Premium Cloud. I can't speak for performance on the API. That's not something that I've run into, but it's certainly something. I don't know if it's widespread or not, or if it might be instance specific. So I don't know if you've opened up a ticket in the past. Certainly do that.
Yeah, I have. It's specifically with Mutt. You know, when we try to update stuff with Mutt, if it's using the old style API, especially, you know, it's doing maybe one call every 3 seconds. I mean, it's really drastically slower than the on-prem was. So like if you're doing something like applying a name to all the devices and checking the box that enforces the name on iPads, it takes a really long time.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I could maybe reach out to Mike if it hasn't been. He's the guy who kind of co-wrote it. See if he could try with a new API, see if it'd be any better, or make it not be every 3 seconds. But yeah, so yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if there's performance specifically if it's just direct API access as opposed to the way that the Mutt's written. But
the tech support people seem to think it has to do with the fact that we're using Google authentication. And our Active Directory, you know, we scope with Active Directory, so they think it might be related to that. But you know, if it's basically, you know how there's 2 types of API calls that Mutt can use. You know, it's like there's the classic and then there's the new way. The new way stuff, it's still lightning fast. But anything that has to go back to the classic, and maybe that's why Stephen Laney said that they're fast. If you can use the new APIs, it seems to be going fast. But for whatever reason, that thing where you have to you know, you want to apply the names to the devices and then check the box, that takes forever. But then stuff like adding devices to groups, that's instant.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I know when you're renaming a mobile device, it actually has to do an MDM command. So there's a bit more happening there. So maybe that's the piece that makes it longer. Stephen Laney said that's not the experience he's had with Jamf Cloud, but I don't know if you want to share whether or not you've done the rename with that, or if you just were doing other stuff within Mutt.
No, and I very, very limited experience with Mutt. I was just trying to replicate our prod instance to a test instance of Jamf that we have. They're both cloud hosted, and yeah, when I was using Mutt, it seemed to move everything over really quick. So it definitely wasn't like an item every 3 seconds.
Yeah, since we have our own internal tools and we don't necessarily use the Mutt for anything. I can't super speak to that, but I know Chad has written scripts that will rename devices. We usually do it where we have it running in like a separate server, like a make.com server, so that we can do it right when the device gets enrolled. So I guess we don't care too much about timing because it takes 1 second or 3 seconds. That operation is going to be happening as soon as the device is enrolled. So
yeah, when you're trying to apply those names to 1,000 devices, though, that 3 seconds makes a difference.
Yeah, we're not doing our environments. But
and I see, just to make sure we got Reed's question, you can still use your file share distribution points. That is something that you could still use. You can also still use both. You can use a hybrid solution where you could use like the Jamf Cloud distribution point as your primary distribution point, and then you can also use file share distribution points. I've worked with a number of customers that they use that for the majority of their customers, but then they have locations that have not the best internet access. They have offices in, not the best spots. I won't necessarily say where, but you can imagine, and where they have to do, syncing overnight and then polling locally instead of over the internet, because otherwise just simple packages would take quite a while to be downloading over the internet. So you can use both.
But I guess if we want to get all of our we want to get everything in the cloud. We want to just retire the on-prem servers completely. Like, the database, our database is relatively small, but then, we have gigs and gigs of files on the distribution points. Like, how do those get migrated up?
Yeah, there'd be a one-time that you'd have to upload them once. That would be a one-time thing.
Jamf admin made that pretty easy.
Yep.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, you
Okay,
can.
cool.
There's a button to you have to click on Jamf Cloud inside of Jamf Admin, and you can just click replicate, and it will go through the process of uploading all those packages. It's going to do it from your local computer. So as long as you have a really good connection on that local computer, the process might not take too long.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, great question.
Is Jamf admin still kind of like teetering on the edge of oblivion, or are they still saying that they're going to get rid of it, or is it going to stick around?
It's not something we're moving. We're looking. I don't know. My non-answer is it's something that we're trying to move away from the client apps. The largest or the biggest challenge that we've had historically was with most of our client apps has been just that it was a challenge for our Jamf admins that weren't working primarily off of a Mac. In our spring event, we talked about how we were moving Jamf remote wasn't going to be a thing anymore. So we were going to be able to do remote assist on your Macs through the web application. And you can anticipate some kind of alternative from Jamf admin as well.
Cool. One question I kind of wanted to get in here because I think it's interesting is Graham, you mentioned that you're a multi-context. And I'm curious, Drew, is there any way that multi-context tenants are able to move to Jamf Cloud, or is that kind of one of those limitations?
That likely would be. That would be a conversation that you could have offline with your account SE to see kind of what the best option would be.
Okay, thanks. I think I've had sort of preliminary conversations, and it does sound like migrating devices is the only way, which might not be the worst thing anyway. After 6-7 years of building up cruft.
Yeah, the nice thing is with migration, there are a lot of really slick alternatives. I should say there are a lot of slick options to make it a hell of a lot easier than it used to be. Especially, I should say, than it used to be post introduction of user-approved MDM. It used to be a lot easier with when we could just kind of create a quick add package and dump it into one Jamf instance, and you could have, if you're dumping it into different instances, you could have as many different quick add packages for however many different Jamf instances you wanted, and you could just silently do it in the background and be done with it. User-approved MDM made that harder, but there are we've got some offerings for Jamf professional services for that. Chris and I have had some conversations about step 2. So there are definitely some options to make it a lot easier. Like we've got one where basically Jamf PS would be able to work with you to create some packages to you can deploy that through your existing Jamf instance, and a package is deployed, and it walks the users through kind of a workflow that just as easily as you can does an API call to wipe them or to remove the MDM profile from their existing one. It's laid down. It's done the groundwork to get it into the new one, and then guides them through the process to get them in a user-approved state for the new instance. So it makes it a lot easier because user-approved really kind of threw a tire iron in your wheel. In your bike wheel before since that. So there's a lot of different options that make it a lot easier. But yeah, the multi-context I honestly, I haven't had anybody ask me about it since I've been an SE for it. So I'd have to, me personally, I'd have to double check with our online services team because I don't know for sure if we would support it or not. But that would be something that just reach out to your SE and they would be able to get you a for sure answer.
Cool, thanks. I was
Yep.
just curious, like I haven't seen it, but I've sort of heard something about this professional services package that you were talking about. Is there something like that, or even a possibility to do that on iOS as well?
Yep.
So without wiping devices?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can do it. It's not just Jamf instance to Jamf instance. We can also do it from third-party MDM as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
yeah,
especially the elephant in the room with a lot of customers is if with the AirWatch Broadcom acquisition or the Broadcom acquisition of AirWatch, there's a lot of customers that are not too looking forward to that. The potential changes there that's been one that a lot of customers are kind of reaching out to have some exploratory conversations about that. And that professional service engagement is a really good option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just helped a customer because of that, because their price was going up like 4 times what it was before. And they had like thousands of assignment groups and applications and everything. So we had to replicate everything over from Workspace ONE to Jamf Pro, all those objects. And that's just apart from even the device migration. That's a whole nother piece, but just getting all of those objects into Jamf Pro so that they get all the apps they need. They had, their devices were like on average in 50 different assignment groups. So we had to get all that information over. Yeah, a bit of a task. We're getting to the end of our time right now, so I just want to make sure I mention that if anyone else has any meetings. But Drew, I don't know if you can stay on for a bit longer or if you have a hard stop. I think
I can stay on.
I think I am good as well. So we might stay on for a little bit longer, but for anyone else that needs to jump to another meeting, now would be the time. But with that, does anyone else have any questions they want to go over? Feel free to still going over like the comments, but feel free to speak up if you have any specific questions.
So I don't know how this relates. I'm not familiar with Jamf Now though, and we've got one of our subsidiary companies is running Jamf Now, and we're bringing them on into our Jamf Pro instance. Other than unenrolling their devices and enrolling them in with our Jamf Pro instance, any issues with that?
No, I mean the one caveat is Jamf Now is not one that we can like automatically migrate over. We didn't, just because Jamf Now doesn't have an API, so we can't, like the pro services migration service that I talked about, where we can kind of do the more automatic stuff.
Sure.
That is one that it doesn't apply to. But as far as migrating from Jamf Now, there aren't any issues just with that migration, because Jamf Now is it's just pulling, when you unenroll it, it's just going to pull out those blueprints.
Right.
And the MDM profile. So it's not going to do anything different to it. And then you're just going to lay down whatever new management stuff is there. So there shouldn't be any issues going from Jamf Now for those customers or for those devices into Jamf Pro.
And I looked through their Jamf Now instance. It's not highly detailed. It was really just this is something we can show our board that we're doing something about it. Okay, I didn't think so, but I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah. We did a Jamf Now migration for a client a while back. And what we ended up doing is creating essentially a launch daemon that we would deploy through Jamf Now that would check to see if the MDM profile was there. because like Drew mentioned, you can't remove it through an API command. So it has to be removed through the GUI. But when they decided to remove it through the GUI, then it would check, it would see, hey, there's no MDM profile there. And then it's going to walk through enrollment through Jamf Pro. And we had two different workflows. One was if they were in a pre-stage, it would check to see that, and then it would do the profiles renew dash type enrollment, and then walk them through. We had a little dep notify video that would walk them through what that process looked like, and then would constantly be checking to see like, hey, has the new profile been installed? And if they didn't, if it did the API call and it didn't notice that they had that it was in a pre-stage, then it would go through the manual URL enrollment. So it'd launch a URL that didn't require a login, have them download that, and then walk them through each of those different steps. Yeah, that's the way we had to do it for that client. And then that ended up being pretty seamless, because once that launch daemon was there, it stayed there. And as soon as the MDM profile was removed, it brought them through the rest of that process. So we ended up not having it was a pretty seamless process, as much as it can be these days.
Yeah, you could still use, like one of these like migration apps or something like that, post removal. Unfortunately, the Jamf Now unenrollment piece would still be manual. Like you'd have to do that through the interface. And then, via email or something like that, you could send out the enrollment. It's just, we wouldn't include any of the API call stuff because it's not there. So you could still include the pieces that kind of walk a user through the enrollment process. And, if you're including any images for where to go for after the CA and the MDM profile have been downloaded, and go into settings and, go through that process. So you could still include those things in some kind of enrollment package or something like that too. So you could do that to improve the end user experience. But it ultimately depends on how much work you want to do to, for how many devices are in there. A lot of, how many machines does that customer, or does that, are we talking about that are in that Jamf Now instance?
4. I mean, it's
yeah. So yeah, never mind.
Yeah, I mean,
Might be a little overkill.
Yeah.
I was getting ready to say I might just have these people drop into the office one afternoon and do it all myself.
Yeah. I'm we're talking about like hundreds or something like that.
No.
Never mind.
This was 500 devices, which I don't understand why this client had Jamf Now for so long that they had 500 devices in there. But
yeah. Talk about a growing environment. Wow.
Yeah. I think they had it, and then they kept it, and then they were like, ooh, migrating is going to be hard, until it got like to a point where it was like, this is ridiculous. I've never seen a Jamf Now instance with so many devices. All right. Are there any other questions?
Maybe just another one about our situation and the kind of professional services costs. I guess we would not be doing any database migration, so that's that bit out. But interested to know what we would be looking at in terms of, I guess we'd be interested in seeing this package thing, for example. And we have 25 Jamf instances or so. And I don't know how much the cost multiplies per instance.
Yeah, we obviously, like the pricing that I mentioned before, that's going to be based off of the standard one instance. There's a separate like licensing cost that is going to still be your per device instance cost, or sorry, your per device cost. What we would ultimately do is we would engage with our pro services team, and we would do a custom scoping call and they would get a better idea of kind of what the work would be that is entailed, and kind of the total hours that they think would be in our pro services team. It's like minimum, kind of the minimum unit, for lack of a better term, is 4 hours, half a day. So we would kind of go through that and figure out how many kind of half days would be required for this, and could be something that they decide we could do in a day, a half day. It could be we do it in multiple days. Whatever they would ultimately decide is what we would go with, and then go from there. And then we'd also do like a custom statement of work for it, probably, just because there'd more than likely be something that it would fall outside of the scope of just a standard. Hey, we're taking your database and we're dumping it up there. There are a lot of tools that are out there that we would be able to leverage too. We could still probably take information and do that. There's like the Jamf Migrator application that we can actually, take the actual information, all the policies and the profiles and settings and what have you that are in there, to massively streamline most of what's in there, the actual data in each instance, to totally cut down the work that would be needed. You don't have to be sitting in there recreating every policy and profile and setting and restricted software setting and all that stuff. We can cut down all that stuff. So there's sort of basically it's kind of what you would want any professional services assistance with. And then we would work with you to kind of ultimately drill down what you would want assistance with, and then come up with what makes the most sense. So again, I'd reach out to whoever your account team is, and schedule a call and work with that, or work with them.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just out of curiosity, Graham, how many tenants do you have?
Well, it's contexts, unfortunately. If it was tenants, we could do the database migrations, but yeah. All told, we're about 30.
30. Now,
Yeah.
Drew, theoretically, and this is probably theoretical, would it be possible to set up 30 different Jamf Cloud instances and migrate normally without having to do like re-enrollment and all that stuff, like just having them set up 30 different instances with 30 different URLs?
I believe, maybe you can answer me better, but I believe from what chats I've had before, that the main problem is that because our URLs, it's a single URL / context, and 30 of them. So, we are my example.org / department 1, that's one instance, and then department 2 is another, and so on. And there's only one set of certificates there, because they're all linked to the one domain. And the problem with that is, unless I'm mistaken, like when we end up, if we can have separate instances in the cloud, I've been told that's no problem, but they would all be their own domain, and they'd be jamfcloud.com domains. And so I don't know how the certificate sort of if you tried to pick the database from our on-premises servers that were these kind of subcontexts, how that could work at a DNS level when we're going from like a subfolder of a single domain to 30 different domains.
Yeah, you would definitely have to re-enroll. There wouldn't be any way to migrate those, which there wouldn't be any way to dump the database. That's why you'd have to use like the Jamf Migrator application to take the elements, and you're just doing API calls, recreating the policies and the content of the database. So in that respect, that's what you have to do, because it wouldn't work. You'd run into, pardon my language, but you'd run into just a ton of shit that you don't want to have to try to fix. So there's tools that would be able to make it a lot better. That you wouldn't run into.
To be honest, because we have so many instances, we have no problems we've built up tools ourselves to copy stuff from one to another. That's not a problem. We already have a sandbox cloud instance actually, or integrated into our stuff, getting content from using the API from one to another. That's nothing we'd need help with. It's just making the migration as seamless as possible, I guess. How that would look on a per user basis. And how we publicize that, how we work with service desk and all that, how that whole process looks is it's something we all have to plan, basically.
Yeah, and the user migration would, all be the same. You'd have your, 30 different packages that you just would have to kind of keep track of which one goes where to make sure that they get the corresponding proper instance. And then they'd all go through the same process. So all of any internal communication would be able to be generalized and be the same. And then they're just migrated and they would go through the same process and be re-enrolled properly. So that part would be relatively easy. And that's where I would have to defer to our pro services team to see what they would be, what they would feel comfortable with. And it could be something where they ultimately decide, because they may ultimately decide, like, we don't need to charge you for 30 of these. We can show you how to make one and you can create 29 more. So but I'd have to defer to them. I'm not at liberty to be able to speak on their behalf in that regard, but that's something to think about. But yeah, reach out to them. Obviously the multi-context thing, I think it's likely just in the conversation that we're having. I don't think that is an option. We'd run into there's too many roadblocks there that just technically it would not work. But their Jamf Cloud, it would just look different than what it is. And just thinking of, I'm sure you probably have it scripted, but there's a bunch of different things that you have to do when it comes to upgrading and all that sort of thing. That you're taking those tasks out of your hand if you move to, or out of your hands, or anybody else on your team. You're not having to deal with that stuff. Then you just get an email and you're like, cool, you guys can do it. Or if there's technical support, or if something goes down, you don't have to deal with that. All those issues that we talked about before is why people are moving to cloud. They don't want to have to deal with that stuff anymore.
Yeah, no, that's certainly the points we are looking forward to. Yeah, not having to maintain the whole infrastructure anymore. Yeah.
Is this just is this just one company, Graham, or are you like an MSP moving over?
It's a good question. No, we are a university, but the kind of, what would you call it? The business model, the working model here is very decentralized, probably more than even most universities. The power is with the professors, and there's a whole different array of IT support groups across the organization, be it a single person looking after one professor's research group, up to like some departments have multiple, like 7 or 8 specialists who with a fleet of 600 or 700 Macs plus far more Windows machines. And then there are some departments that are actually run by central IT, but it's all like done by consent, I suppose. Like there's no top-down enforcement. So it kind of works like an MSP, I would say.
Yeah, we've worked with universities like that. It can be frustrating being like, we're IT, we need to be able to call the shots, right? But it's like, no, everyone needs to call the shots. We all need to be in consensus.
Yeah, that's right. Our particular group is a service provider. We provide a enhanced Jamf service to customers. They just all happen to be inside the same company.
Exactly.
The other is sites an option?
It wasn't at the time that we've built up this infrastructure, just because of the kind of nature of the administration groups. There's sort of crossover and things, and it was quite complicated to give the right access to the right people that way. And people were kind of conceptually happier with their own instance, their own sandbox.
Sure.
Certainly there's a conversation happening at the moment to reduce the number of instances. I don't know if we'll get to one, but if there's something we can do there, or anyway, that doesn't need to be a conversation we have here. But yeah, I mean, obviously after 7 years, you sort of can look back and look at decisions you made back then and see what maybe if we're going through a full migration of devices anyway, then how that might look afterwards could be different. Yeah, it's an opportunity, put it that way.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Yeah, it's like almost 20 minutes past. It looks like most people have dropped. So might be a good time to wrap it up. Thanks so much, Drew, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Great discussion, a little bit smaller group, since the topic I think is very, very specific to people looking to move, but very engaged group with a lot of awesome questions. It was great talking to you too, Graham, about the multi-context environment. I haven't seen one of those in a while. That's really fun.
You're welcome to come and have a look if you want. I don't recommend it. But
awesome. Well, have a great rest of your Friday, everyone, and have a great weekend. And see us next month on July 7th as we go through the WWDC updates.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Is there a recurring meeting for this, or a list that can be added on to?
Yep. Caleb, are you there?
Yes, I am.
List.
Well, to get on the list, the first registration will help a lot. But if you want to, did you sign in using your work email or your common email? We can pull it from the meeting attendees and make sure you're on the list in the future. And then Chris just posted the website that'll help you get to our schedule.
Mm-hmm. And then you can also sign up from there too. But you can sign up for the various sessions, so you can actually register for next session now.
Gotcha.
If you wanted to get that on your calendar.
Awesome.
Yeah, we didn't really do a good explanation that we typically do that. This is something we do every month.
Yeah, and if you want, we have all of our past LaunchPad meetups online on our YouTube channel as well.
Oh yeah, I posted those links before. I can find that. I have that right here. So here's the YouTube. And we'll post this one on YouTube as well. And then we've recently created a podcast, so you can check that out as well. The YouTube just has like the keynote presentation, and the podcast has the whole thing, including the LaunchPad times.
Authorized registrants? Am I not a?
What was that?
I'll look into it. Yeah, I'm apparently I'm
Oh,
not.
you were trying to register for the next one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird where you have to have a Zoom account with the email that you're registering. We've actually changed that for this one, but I don't know if we've changed it for all the other meetings we've created. So
yeah, I do not have one.
Yeah, so we'll probably change that soon. We did that this time. The difference is now we have to manually let everyone in. So like as we're going through the meeting and people are joining, we're just like admit. Zoom's a little bit weird with these like large presentations like this, where you get like you know, when you get 50 to 100 people on a Zoom call, it gets a little strange.
I bet.
Zoom likes to set up seminars for things this size, but I don't like it as much because it doesn't allow like everyone to be like talking on the call. Typically, you just have a couple speakers, but I want everyone to be able to chime in and say different things and ask questions and stuff like that. So we have to do these like weird types of things.
Drew, were you the one that spoke about Rocket Man at Chinook last year?
Me? Yeah. Me and Chad did the Jamf toolkit presentation, and then
Okay.
Eric did the other presentation. I think it was from good to great.
Remember which one I saw. It was fun last year. I had a blast.
Yeah. Oh, first time in person for like 3 years. Yeah, that's great. I think
I was
maybe
stationed
had too
out
much
there
fun.
20 years ago, and so I stayed with an old Marine Corps buddy, and we just had excluding the night out on the carrier, we just had a blast. I mean, we went back to our old stomping grounds, got on base, went into the hangars. It was a blast out there.
Yeah, that was a good time. That was a lot of fun.
I hope they do a cold weather soon. I'm tired of the San Diego hot, and now Austin. Austin's going to be an oven.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's better than Minneapolis.
I disagree. I'm just out of Cleveland, Ohio, and I would much prefer nice ice and snow.
Man, I mean, I grew up in Wisconsin, so I'm like, and yeah, not there any longer. Moved to Colorado, but yeah, not for me. I'm fine not being around that cold weather.
If I can find a place in Alaska that's got great internet service, I'm gone.
That's your dream.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, have a great weekend.
Yep. All right, see you guys. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.